Whoa, CrunchBites. We're here in episode 4. We got myself, Chris Holden. We got John Jones. We got John Henderson. We got Jesse Sosa. Look at all these J's.
Woo.
Hey, here's tonight's question from Greg at Amato. It's like tomato? Okay. Quality of work to time. How to balance what is preferred. Is work worth sacrificing to meet a specific time frame? What do you got, John?
Yes, it is. Jesse?
All right. I'll have to follow that somehow. All right. So
You tricked me. All right, go ahead, Jesse. Sorry.
All right. So I've had a lot of experience with this, doing the lead stuff in Ghostbusters and a little bit in Star Wars. But as an artist, more accurately, as a professional, you should be mature enough to know when to go ahead and stop, because you can look at your work and say, all right, I'm pushing it a little bit too far. Some important things to try and remember is that when you're working on a character or any kind of asset in 3D Max, you can zoom in all the way down and just see the giant pixels of your texture. But what you have to remember is where this asset's going to be in the game, how it's going to be used, how many times you're going to see it. Those are all questions that are going to play into exactly how much time you should put into this. If it's going to be just in a corner somewhere and you never interact with it, then you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. I've encountered a lot of artists that seem to kind of forget that, and they'll start staring at like fingernails and toenails and things like that, things that you'll never ever see, or that your texture won't even be able to support. Why are you going to spend time normal mapping follicles when in the end you're only going to be using a 512 texture? You don't even have the amount of pixels needed. Most modern game engines will have utilities to where you can view a scene and it'll give you kind of a pixel, it'll color the scene up depending on how many pixels are being omitted, or if it's a good 1-for-1 ratio for your scene. And if your engineers have not developed something like that, then that's something that you should request, because it really puts a lot of things into perspective when you're walking around. Like, maybe you don't need a 2048 on a character if you're making a third-person game. You can get away with a 1024 because you'll never ever zoom in on a character that close. Little things like that. For me, you just have to be mature and professional enough to know when to stop and how to time yourself, and know that if there's someone telling you these things, they're not out to make your art look bad. They're just trying to make sure that the game is going to be coming in within budget and time schedule. That's kind of where I stand with the whole thing. Just be sure to always keep things in perspective. Always play your game, because if you play your game, then you'll see everything in real time and you'll be able to know. As a character artist, there are many things that are more important than the characters in a game, and we want to make sure that there's enough resources for those other things like, gameplay and AI. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say, one of the weird arguments I heard a long time ago is environments are 90% of the screen space. That's not necessarily what's really that important, because obviously there's going to be major player characters, up closes, faces, and whatnot, which are going to be the major cinematic storyline telling elements in a lot of games, especially these days. One of the things that I came up with, and I talked about a little bit earlier before we started this, was the art compass graph. And by compass, I mean like a north to south sort of vertical and an east to west graph, where you base things where, say, south to north is time versus west to east is how often it's actually used in the game. And the example was, okay, you do some rock that's used in a terrain that's everywhere. That's obviously going to be a piece it's a rock, because it's going to be a little bit easier, but it's going to be used so much that you should think about it just a little bit more, versus, say, a single key used in a quest, which is going to be used only once in a very small amount of, no one's going to see it but this few times, so you shouldn't really be wasting a lot of time on that. Now, that whole quality of work versus how to balance, what's more preferred, Yeah, sometimes you've got to sacrifice a little bit more. Like, say, if you're doing a game, the start area should be very important, but that doesn't mean you should take a crap on somewhere midway through. However, you've got to consider what people are going to look at more. You got to consider art that's going to be in a trailer, the way the game is actually sold, unless some sort of. I've had this happen before. We had somebody in the fucking the PR department. They looked down at the floor and took a screenshot of the floor. I'm like, why would you do that? Why don't just take a nice quality screenshot? And the most important thing is let art control this whole marketing, where if you know it's going to be a big piece, you know it's going to be good, you know it's going to be the big thing everyone's going to look at, then make sure marketing knows that's the thing and you focus on a specific angle to make sure everything looks good to sell the product. This isn't to say take a crap on everywhere else. This isn't one of those make everything else worse. No, it's saying make everything as good as possible, but understand what people are going to see and make sure that those people are getting the best that they're going to get. What do you got, guys?
John?
Mr. Henderson? Or
No,
Jones?
Jones. I have one thing. Just what you're talking about, you can contribute to a project individually. I didn't think I would have this, but a little bit, if anyone's played System Shock 2 and got all the way to the very end level, which is the body of the many, the idea that this weird biological organism that's taken over 2 different spaceships and tied them together with this big flesh mass in space. Apparently, the textures that were generated for that, just so they could get realism, were at least in part generated from one team member's colonoscopy.
That's fucking disgusting.
Oh, man.
Jesus
So you're
Christ.
going around in the butt of the many.
That's awesome.
I don't want to be in anybody's butt. I don't want to play in somebody's butt.
Space Butt Shock 2.
All right. So, John, Jones, in your experience doing outsourcing, do you have anything?
So, to speak back to the original question and kind of like pull it apart, quality of work to time, how to balance, what's more preferred? Is work worth sacrificing to meet specific time frames? If you are in the business of professional art, then yes, absolutely. Work, like, you need to get shit done on time. Whatever your client says, the work, the time frame in which the work should be done is the amount of time frame in which it should be done. There's no place for being an artiste. There's no place for being an artisan. You are a professional artist for hire, and you need to be able to know how to do the best you can in the shortest amount of time that you can, and to be able to make that work, and to be able to meet whatever the client wants or needs. And that is one of the benefits of contracting. It is easier to get into a contracting relationship than to a full-time employment relationship. And if you're in a contracting relationship, everything you do day to day is all about delivery and making sure that you're able to meet the needs of your client. And you have to be able to do whatever the hell is needed in the amount of time needed to be able to make their shit get done. And if you have to sacrifice parts of your life for it, if you have to sacrifice anything for it, then if that is what is your priority in life, then you need to fucking do it. If it's not, then you need to get out of freelancing, or you need to be able to find clients that are a lot more laid back than that. But ultimately, the beginning and end of it is you need to make sure the client gets what they want, no matter what. Because this is the thing that not a lot of people understand about freelancing. If you're freelancing, you are in the business of customer service, and you need to be the best motherfucking customer service person ever. If you have a client, you need to be the best motherfucking customer service person on earth. And in many cases, that involves giving them the art they want. In other cases, that means communicating as quickly as they want. In many cases, that means being able to deliver things in the technical constraints that they want. Find out what your client wants, what they need, find out what they value rather than you. Like 30 hours working on a character model may not necessarily be the most important thing to a client, or as making sure that it looks the same as everything else in the game, even if it's worse, is more important, that's a kind of decision, a middle abstraction you're going to have to make. That's all I got for that.
Well, fair enough. I guess that moves it to the open discussion.
How much time do we have left?
Oh, we got plenty of time.
Huh.
We just hit 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think what some artists fail to realize too is that, especially when you're freelance, you are essentially your own business. You know, you are going to be marketing yourself in such a way. So if you're always the guy that can't meet deadlines and stuff like that, people are not going to want to employ you anymore. They're going to want your services, as John said. You are a service. So at that point, there's really no ego about it. You can spend all the time you want on your portfolio pieces, but when it comes down to freelance work or even work inside a studio, it's all about professionalism. It's all about being mature enough to say, hey, you know what? I only have a week left on this character. The shoes are good enough. We're going to keep going. Because if you maintain a good schedule throughout your project, then theoretically you should have time at the end of the project to go back and tweak stuff up. So if it means only being able to take a character up to 90-95%, then do it, because you should have time at the end to go back and touch it. Now, you should always make art that looks good, and we're not saying make crappy art, but there's definitely a point where the average person sitting at this, will not notice.
Oh, absolutely. I would just want to throw that out because I've been in situations where they say, hey, we've got a big media push and we've got to make this whole new area or whatever, and you just pump it out as quick as possible, and then you polish after that. Anyway, yep. Whoever's got next is go ahead.
Well, I think we've talked, at least I talked about knowing your own value. It sounds like everyone's talking about knowing your own ability to contribute and provide value to the entire project. And like Jones was saying, there may be several different roles that you can play, especially when you're your own boss. And so understanding when to do what, rather than getting fixated, maybe as artists might, or any professional really, on the thing that seems like the best thing at the time, knowing when to switch that off. And really, that seems to be the one X factor that probably the person who asked the question wasn't very sure about. And you may be able to do one thing really well, but understanding that other things are maybe necessary and knowing when to switch hats, as it were, that seems to be the hard part.
And one quick thing, working in steps, as in you get in a basic, what it's supposed to be, then you get in some basic texturing, and you keep pushing steps. Not just going for, okay, I got it, and I'm going to push for a final from the start, might possibly work better for your project, just because sometimes you just don't have the time to get the big final polish.
Yeah. This is what we're currently doing in Mech Knight. Mech Knight, my character pipeline is I proxy things out, I give them to my animator. He figures stuff out in animation, I begin modeling. While he's doing his first pass animations, I'm modeling. Then he puts it in the game. We figure out if there's any problems. I fix it on my end. Then he gets a final mesh that isn't UV'd. He does a final rigging pass. He starts working on final animations. I texture because we don't have time to wait for me to give him a final model, because we need to answer a lot of these questions now. So I mean, that's what I've been working on today. I've been working on a proxy. So yeah.
And have any of your textures been sourced from the asses of other team members?
No. It's all CrunchBites. CrunchBites.
CrunchBites.
So yeah, nice work, guys. I feel like we kind of answered that question. Again, I'm Chris Holden. He's Jesse Sosa. He's John Henderson. He's John Jones. Anything to promote in the last 20 seconds?
Jones. At John Jones, Mech Knight Chronicles.
At Crunch Studios. Wait, no, just Crunch Studios. At CrunchCast on Twitter. At Chris Holden DEV on Twitter.
At Skanker0. At Dinosaur Dev.
Nice. And I'll be at the Captive doing some kind of talk, whatever that's all about. I'm just going to pull it out of my ass.
Captivate.
The new hot conference.
Yep.
Actually, let John talk about this.
Well, he's got 2 seconds.
Let's let John close this out.
Captivate Conference, October 6th through 8th, in between the two Austin City Limits festivals. Filling the space left by GDC Online. It's convergent media, so it's not just game development, but anyone who could do creative and technical stuff and still get paid. You want to come to this conference, CaptivateConference.com.